Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Chapter 19 says, Babun fi man sanna sunnatan hasanatan aw sayyi'ah. Regarding those who make a good or bad practice, put forth a good or bad example. Those who create a good or bad chamber. They start off a practice that was unknown, abandoned, neglected, totally unprecedented, and the people follow this person therein, for good or for bad. Babun fi man sanna sunnatan, he who makes a sunnah, whether it's sayyah or hasana. What is the ruling on this? Was the virtue of making a good example, starting a good practice. What is the vice, the sin, the wrath of Allah that is incurred upon the individual who starts and gets the people to do something that's negative and evil. And then many people that come later on and they follow you therein. Very important chapter. After the 18th chapter with regards to bidah and muhdathat al-umur, innovations in the religion. Now, so this chapter 19 is a hybrid. It's a double-edged sword. The prohibition of making bid'ah, making up religious practices that have no clear, authentic, sound, direct foundation in the kitab and the sunnah. And now in chapter 19 is when a person brings back a practice that was from the sunnah, but the people forgot about it, or the people neglected it, or have abandoned it. Or a practice that's not necessarily directly proven in the sunnah, but it's nothing against it. And it's a general virtue, such as the brothers coming together to eat food after Jumu'ah. The brothers having, like we learned from Toronto, Canada, having a dars on Sunday morning after Fajr. Everybody comes together, the whole community. They have breakfast, they have a little lesson. It keeps a close watch on the community. The young brothers, the older brothers, see what everybody's doing. It's not nothing specifically supporting that. But it's not nothing that's going against that as well. The virtue of eating together, coming together, praying together, etc. So it's like a double-edged sword now. The virtue of making a good bid'ah, i.e., something that's from the deen, but the people forgot about it. The people haven't abandoned it and they've neglected it because of culture, because of paying bills, because of this sheikh and that sheikh. Whatever reason lies behind the people forgetting about Muhammad's practice. So a person comes along and he doesn't create the act, he doesn't bring it about, but he does what? He blows the dust off of it. He polishes it, he shines it, and presents it to the people and says, oh, that's nice. And the people didn't follow him therein. And that's what's meant by the statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, ni'mal bid'atu hadhihi. He said, a good bid'ah this is, praying tarawih behind one imam. Nothing that was made up. Muhammad ﷺ legislated it and allowed it. He did it himself. But the people had left it alone for one reason or another. It doesn't mean it's bid'ah hasana in the deen, meaning hardcore bid'ah, stone cold bid'ah, something that is no dalil for, is not proven, and you continually do it and continue to practice it. That's a different story. On the second side is starting a new practice, whether it's a bid'ah or a sin. Smoking a cigarette, and then other people start smoking cigarettes. Or having a tattoo. You have a tattoo, and you have younger brothers and sisters. They see your tattoos. They see you that you're tatted up. And say, oh, that's cool. Let me get a tattoo. Let me get a bulldog on my arm, or a scorpion, or this girl's name, or this, whatever the case may be, Grim Reaper on my arm, or my chest, or my neck, or my hand, or my face, whatever the case may be. And then they follow you in that horrible practice of getting a tattoo. Well, how could that? So you being a role model in Islam, very important. You reviving the sunnah, giving life back to the sunnah, very important. That's what chapter 19 is about. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, قال الله تعالى والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. The first ayah, the proof that he uses to support this, It's from Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 74. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ, and He praises and He lauds His slaves, Allah's slaves. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ, and those who say, i.e., Allah is praising them. And this is a very beneficial point when you read these verses in the Quran. And those who come, and those who say, and those who do. It can mean Allah is praising them or Allah is dispraising them, depending on the context. So here Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ, and those who say, meaning praising and lauding them. Allah is speaking highly of them. They say what? رَبَّنَا, our Lord, O Allah, هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا, give us, endow us, bless our children and our wives, allow us to find pleasure and splendor in our family members. Allow us to have righteous children, righteous spouses, good family relations. Allow, whenever we look at our children, when a man looks at his wife, a woman looks at her husband, allow it to be a qurrat ayn, something that you find pleasure in. It's soothing to you. When you look at what Allah has blessed you of family, of husband, of wife, etc., of grandchildren. Be happy that you have grandchildren. And then they also say, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, and make us leaders for the muttaqeen, role models for the muttaqeen. So the highly important ayah is what? The concept of them being leaders for those who come afterwards, i.e. in righteousness. I'll ask Allah to allow them to make what? Sunnah hasana, a good practice, not bid'ah, something that's from the deen or something that's from the worldly affairs, which is positive and fruitful. Nothing that's viceful. So that's the highly important from that ayah. This ayah also proves, according to many of the ulama, the superiority of being an imam in the deen. The superiority of being an imam in the religion. Whether it means a 9-to-5 salat imam, or whether it means just an imam, like a major scholar and a major mujahid in the religion. Someone that is a role model, someone that's a hero to the Muslims, the people look up to, someone who's from the Ummah, having so much ilm, so much knowledge, so much benefit, so much courage and chivalry, in which yudrabu bihi al-mathal. The people, they make an example out of him. They say he's from the Ummah of this century. 100 years later, 20 years later, 500 years later, they come behind and they read about you. He lived, he did this, he did that. He's from the Ummah. So, the ulama of Islam, they say that the highest physical worship that the Muslim can obtain is the Imam. And they say it's even more virtuous than being the Mu'adhin. And others, they say that the Mu'adhin is better. Based off of the Hadith of Muawiyah and Sahih Muslim, إِنَّ أَطُولَ النَّاسِ أَعْنَاقًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ الْمُؤَذِّنُونَ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. The people who have the longest necks on the day of judgment are those who make the adhan. خيرا inshallah. Then the author, he says, وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ليس من نفس تقتل إلا كان على ابن آدم الأول كفل من دمها لأنه كان أول من سن القتل متفق عليه. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said, any soul, or whenever a soul is murdered, whenever someone's life is taken unjustly, then Adam's son, the one who introduced the practice of murder, will have a percentage of the sin, will have a piece of the sin. And that's because he is the forefather, he is the one who blazed the trail of killing unjustly. And this hadith is collected by Bukhari and Muslim. So it clearly shows as perfect connection and relativity between the chapter heading and the hadith, is that he was the first one to take someone's soul unjustly, and afterwards the people, they learnt from his practice and they followed his evil way, and therefore he has a kifl, a part, a juz, a nasib of their sin, because he started this evil practice. Hadith clearly shows what the author is talking about, making a good sunnah or a what? A bad sunnah. And the vice of doing, obviously, with regards to making a bad sunnah. Hadith also teaches us about the volatile nature of a murderer and of killing unjustly. And that under any circumstances is prohibited in Islam to murder someone. Now, the exact opposite is the exact opposite. Just because it's haram to make murder in Islam doesn't mean it's haram to kill in Islam. Murder is killing someone that's in an unjust manner. Execution, warfare, whatever the case may be, if it's legislated and it's legitimate according to Allah and His Rasul, then under any circumstances it's considered to be what? Murder. And it's wrong to mix the two concepts. Some people, they go to the extreme or the extremity, they'll say there's no killing in Islam. It's totally wrong. No, there's no such thing. Islam is 159% absolutely peaceful. There's no such thing as killing in Islam. This hadith and other texts. And that's what? That's wrong. And the hypocritical thing is, or the ironic thing, is that the person that you're trying to please, the person that you're trying to appease by compromising to and warping the deen and changing and switching your identity, the person that you're speaking to and getting on your knees and begging for acceptance, this person's hands are what? Dripping with blood from the very first day of his existence. And it hasn't been a continent, a place, or an island this person has went to except that it was mass bloodshed. And the greatest, biggest, largest wars known by man were started off by this country or these countries that you're trying to suck up to. And as you speak and say that Islam is absolutely 101% peaceful, there's no such thing as any war, there's no animals being slaughtered, nothing, there's no bloodshed in Islam, period. As you speak and you make these bogus, baseless claims, there are pints of blood, gallons and buckets being what? Dumped and poured. As you speak, there are bombs being dropped. As you speak, there are people being executed and tortured and murdered. As you speak, in the name of their cause and what they believe in, whether it's democracy, freedom of religion, whatever it's called, as you speak. So don't you feel that's a bit ironic? You're trying to prove that you're absolutely 101% turn the other cheek piece to someone who's a stone cold, cold-blooded what? Murderer. He said, what? Shun him. Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this or not? So this is very, 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 very dangerous concept. And this is what happens when you just lose your Islamic identity and you lose your values. As far as if we lived in a different country or you lived in a different place, and it's not just America, but if you lived in a different, if you were speaking to other people that were actually about peace, it'd be a different story. Even though it'd still be incorrect to say things about Islam that are incorrect. However, you're talking to someone, to a group, a collection of men and women that have killed, and killed. And are still what? As we speak. So that doesn't even make sense. So yeah, it's very unfortunate. May Allah Azza wa Jalla help us all and help all of the Muslims. The concept of taking someone's soul is serious in Islam. It's dangerous. It's not a joke. It isn't something that's to be done haphazardly. However, killing someone in Islam is like nothing else is in the religion of Islam. There are rules in which there is and there isn't. Rules when you can pray and when you what? You can't pray. Taking someone's life, and which is haram to. And there's other times in which is what? It's mandatory. You have to. And it may be a benefit for that person. Everybody understand this? Let alone the benefit of the people as a whole. So what's important is we are servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is our job and our duty to earnestly work and find out what our master wants from us. And when we find out what he wants from us, it's to try our best to implement it and practice it. Those who like it and accept it, alhamdulillah. Those who don't like it and don't accept it, what can we do? Haphazard killing and murder, just reckless, irresponsible bloodshed. Obviously, no Muslim is going to say that that's from Islam. That's impossible. A religion that has so much meticulous detail, meticulous order and organization, it's impossible for you to think that that's Islam. To just spill blood like water in the street. This person, that person, whatever name you call it, whatever cause you call it, that's impossible. But that doesn't push us to the other side of extremism and twisting and warping and bending the text of the kitab and what? Of the Sunnah. Everybody understand this? And it applies to anything else in Islam with regards to women's rights. Is anyone going to sit here and say that Islam is a religion that promotes, that allows, encourages, and condones for you to batter your wife and to beat her up, give her a black eye and knock out her tooth and break her jaw and pull her hair and kick her in the ribs? No one is ever going to read anything from Kitab and Sunnah, not even a verse in the Quran that says beat them, and understand that from Islam. No one in their right state of mind is going to read the Quran, read Muhammad's lifestyle, and think that that is what's meant by that verse and those hadiths, to batter your wife. No one in their right mind is going to read that. Everybody understand this? That just doesn't make sense. At the same time, when you talk about women's rights, a woman can inherit. A woman doesn't have to change her last name. A woman does not do this for her husband, that's haram. All the things that the freedom that a woman has in Islam, in the Sharia, that hasn't been given to her in history and many things to this day. That does not mean that it pushes you to the extreme and saying that a woman has absolute autonomy like a man and absolute authority, and she doesn't have to ask permission for this, and it inherits like a man, and so on and so on. That's an extreme. And that's exactly what happens. Women's rights, no doubt. But not that. That's batil. That's no, evident. That's too far. Everybody understand this? Or the concept of animal rights. Does Islam promote the kind treatment of animals? No question. Does Islam prohibit the cruelty of animals? No question. There's no doubt about that. Those who read the Quran and read the Sunnah. However, it doesn't push you to the extreme in which you say you have to be a vegan. You have to be a vegetarian. There's no such thing as animal slaughter. You can't grab the sheep and put it on the ground and put your foot on his neck and cut it with a sharp blade. That's inhumane. That's barbaric. That's extreme. That's what? That's extreme. So we have to be mindful of what our identity is. What does Islam say about feminism? Is everything in a movement or the concept of understanding feminism wrong and Islam can reject it? No, it's not. Abadan. But certain aspects, other things, no question. And the list goes on with regards to respecting your neighbor, LGBT, treating people living as minorities, and the list goes forward. Does Islam say that if my neighbor is a homosexual, I have to kill him and blow up his house? It doesn't say that. But Islam doesn't say that I have to condone and accept his practice of whatever his practice is. There's always a balance, and we always have to keep our identity as Muslims. No matter where we are, no matter what the situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.